Right.
So they'll be able to see you there.
Hello.
Right. So they should be able to see you and hopefully hear you.
So we'll get them to. We can ask them.
Okay.
So can you hear us? We'll need to tell them to click on their chat.
Yes.
Hey.
Okay. Right.
Right, Lauren. Can't hear. That's a problem.
Tried headphones?
No, I can't. What
No,
wrong?
they tried headphones.
Oh. We turned the sound up on their computer. Lauren, gosh.
Lauren's got headphones. Okay. Yeah, the other sound.
Should we just check my sound turned off? I don't think it was.
But it's not.
100%, yeah, I thought I'd done that.
We didn't enable the microphone, so.
Sally?
Other option is you show your slides on the camera. Application share screen. So I don't want to share the screen. Your entire screen. Choose what you'd like to share. Ah, hang on. You've got to press that. Duh.
What have you got to check?
You just literally got to press that.
Oh.
Share it. Oh, they can hear us. Oh, there's Margaret Arthur. She's at home.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh my God, how weird
We
is
can
that?
hear you. That's fantastic. We didn't know if we'd be able to hear you because you've got a computer with sound.
Yeah.
Make yourself comfortable. Have a cup of tea.
Yeah, already.
What a lovely house you have.
Thank you.
Oh, we lost the connection. Okay, hang on. So we need to. We're just gonna be trying to share our screen a second. So
We just need to get the PowerPoint up. There it is.
Hang on.
Hooray!
Can you guys see this screen?
So if we, I can't. If we,
So pop yes in the messaging if you can.
so if we go up to the top, we should get the messaging coming up. So I need to see them.
Messaging. So you can see the screen. Fantastic. Okay. So we might need to do. Because you really want to just see Malgazar. So.
I need to see my slides.
Yeah.
I need to move them on. What's this here?
Ah, there we go. Okay. So. The trouble is, you need to be able to see that. Oh, yeah. Oh.
I need to see their responses, don't I? Their chat.
Because you need to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, how easy is it to see the PowerPoint slides on your left, on the left of the screen? Can you actually read those, or is it too... Easily can read it. Okay, thanks, Lauren. What about Sally Dring? We haven't heard from you on the chat thing yet. Sally, can you hear us at all? Are you able to say whether you can or not? You should be able to click. There's like a little speech chat with all button. If you click that, you should hopefully be able to type in a message. It's all a lovely testing.
Yeah, I can text her.
And we're just waiting for a few more people to join, I think, as well. So we've got Lauren, we've got Gosha, and
Sally.
we've got Sally, we've got Maria, from HR. Hi. And we've got Sharon as well, apparently. So hi, Sharon, and hi, Maria, if you're there. Right. Okay, so Mal, so Gosha could see it as well. So Maria has said something as well. Hello, we are here. Oh, cool. We didn't know you guys were coming in.
You're very welcome.
You cheeky sneakers in, but you're very welcome.
You might be able to help us with the technology because we're having some challenges at this end.
New chat on the wall. Oh no, didn't want that. There we go. Okay.
So still no Sally.
Still no Sally. Sally, have you tried the chat with all? Can you hear us at all? Chat with Sally Dring. Sally, I'm just sending you a message.
So Maria and Sharon, just while we're waiting to hear from Sally, the team here, the apprentices, have got a handout that supports this, which you won't have. So I can send it to you if you want it after today. So I might refer to that during the webinar, but I can send it to you after today. And it would be really helpful to have your constructive criticism on how you perceive this to be. I'd welcome that. Obviously, don't criticise us for the technology because there's nothing we can do about that.
This is first time, everyone, so obviously appreciate that we've got a couple of technical things that we had to sort out. So Sally will probably get going in a minute. We're just waiting for a couple more to join, hopefully. But to be honest, we'll give it a couple more minutes and we'll probably just start with what we've got, if that's all right. Because there's not really much point starting late just for the sake of it.
He couldn't, and I think he couldn't.
So,
and I think she couldn't because of shifts.
Okay. So we should still have 1, 2, Emma,
3, 4, 5, 6.
Ideally. So we're missing Emma at the minute.
Well, learners.
Still not heard back from Sally, so I'm hoping that we can still. Sally, if you can hear us, if you can ping a message back. I've just sent you a little message to see if you can hear us and see us.
Michelle?
Missing Michelle as well, so I'm not sure if Sally and Michelle might be together, potentially on the same computer. But I'll only know that if Sally can give me a message back.
Sally, 3, 4, Emma, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who's missing one? Gosha, Roy, Sally.
Hang on, you're not.
Yeah.
Emma,
Michelle, Julie. Sally,
Julie. No, hang on. Oh, Stephanie.
Thank you. Pharmacy.
So I don't know whether Stephanie, Sally, and Michelle and Julie are all on the same one. We don't really know. Sorry, You can just hear us chatting rather than.
This is all being recorded.
This is all being recorded. This is going to be great.
We can edit it.
So, so those of you that are on this already, it would have been really good to see if Sally could actually hear us. But I think we are just going to have to make a start and see how we get on. So is everyone happy to do that? If you can give me a little yes in the old message box, that would be great. There we go. Fabulous. Maria, join the chat with all. That would be great because then it means that I can see your messages come through with everyone else's rather than just separately. That would be really good. It means that otherwise I've got to send you a message separately. There should be a chat with all button. So if you can pop a yes in the chat with all, that'd be great. Okay.
Do we want to try sharing the screen again, or are we going to just take it from the...
To be honest, you can put the PowerPoint up as a full screen and then talk as you go through the PowerPoint. It's just that if you then want to then see their messages, you'd have to switch back to there. But that could be reasonably straightforward. I can stay with you if you want to do that, swap and change, but it's up to you.
I don't mind. I'm thinking of your time. I'm happy to go through it. It's up to you whether you want to stay for another hour.
Right. Okay. Maria, are you able to put a little yes in that chat for all before we start? Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay.
Have we got Sharon in the chat for all?
And Sharon's with Maria, so I think they're using the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Sally. I hope you enjoyed the session. And hopefully.
There we are.
So can I just double check if you can all give me a yes, whether you can see and read those slides okay, if they're like that. I'm going to try and make them a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so that I can see your chat.
How's that? Sharon, could you pop a yes in the chat for all? So you've just sent me a message just separately yourself. But if you can send me a message on the chat for all, that would be great. So it means everyone's messages comes through all in the same bit. Saves me having to open up your message. Oh, she's not able to get her sound working. Okay, that could be a problem. Chat all. Okay, so Sharon's having a problem with her sound at the moment, but we're probably just going to have to crack on with that. Maria, if you and Sharon are in a similar place, that you may not be, so we will carry on.
Yeah.
So Lauren and
we've heard from
Lauren. Gosh, definitely heard from. Okay, I'm going to leave in the webinar. Medium peace.
Right. My technical whiz here. Okay. Who's that? Bye-bye, Maria said.
Bye, Maria.
Okay. All right, I'll just let Leanne leave the room.
Oh gosh, there's a... Hang on. Oh, it's because I can see you.
We have Leanne logged on from the other side of the room here. You can see the back of my head, which is probably better than the front of my head, to be quite honest.
So it does look like Sally has got audio. So chat with all.
Yeah.
And so you can go chat to everyone.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. There we go. For me.
Right, all right.
I'm going to leave you in peace.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much
All right.
for your help.
You go.
Okay. All right. Good morning again. So, Sally Dring, hello. You can hear us. How nice. Thank you for joining. Okay, I'll make this as painless as I can. So, bear with us on the technology and thank you for joining. When we can work the gremlins out, we can make these affecting this. I would like to you and have you talk to me, and I'd planned to do it that way, but unfortunately, unless you've got, Gosha can talk to us, but unless you've got the technology on your computer to speak, it doesn't work. And the Trust doesn't necessarily have that in place for everybody on their desktops. So let's start off, you'll be looking at my head as I look down at my notes, but let's start off by talking about why we decided to do this particular webinar. We'd have done this learning irrespective of whether we did it via webinar or not, but the reason for doing this is because in your apprenticeship, in your learning, we've asked you to use your work priorities to draw. And you've all begun to identify areas for development or improvement, project, if you like, but a real work, things that you'd like to do. And we need to, or you need to, explore these further as part of problem solving and decision making, a part of your apprenticeship. It's something that you've got to do. It's some of the skills that you have to show, and you need to know techniques for those things. And all of those factors, so the work priorities, applying the work, problem solving, decision making, and actually your personal development planning, all of these factors combine, and within your personal development plan, which we need to look at finalising during April, I'll come to that at the end of this, all of these factors will contribute to what your personal development plan says. Because if you remember in the classroom and individually with you, we've talked about how your development needs will be driven by the work that you need to do to keep this relevant to your work and meaningful to your department. So your development needs will be driven by the work that you need to do, and your development needs will be captured in your personal development plan, which is one of the things Innovate will check in endpoint assessment. And your personal development plan will have behind it or associated with it a number of documents which are about the projects themselves and not your personal development. So I've encapsulated that on the first page of the handout that accompanies this, which I'll send again after today. So that's why we're doing the webinar, really. Let me just move that on. So in theory, you can hear me, I can't hear you. I think we've established that that's okay. We know who's on the webinar. You know that you can talk to me through those boxes, and we know that that's possible, so that's good. So you can ask me questions, by the way, at any time. So you can ask me questions at any time. If I'm going too fast or you don't understand something, just type. I can see the message screen. Just type in the message screen and I'll try and respond. So the aim of this, to consider the information that we need, and you need really, but that we need to substantiate ideas for improvements, and some ways we might gather and present that information. Because those of you on the apprenticeship have come up with...
I don't know if you sat too close.
Hello, I can hear somebody. Is that Sal?
Oh.
Who am I hearing? I'll carry on. I can hear somebody. It's Sally, I think, says Lauren. Thank you. Okay. Right. So the aim, yes, is to consider the information that you need to gather. Not you, Sal. Okay. To consider the information you need to gather to substantiate your ideas for improvements, and some ways that you might gather and present that information. Because if there are things that you want to develop, you're going to need to get approval, I guess, and liaise with your managers and others. We don't want to be running amok. So as we go through the webinar, it might help you if you have an idea in your mind, one of the things that you're focusing on. So I know some of you are thinking about a training package that you want to develop. Others of you are thinking about the performance management of specific teams as being an area for development, something that you want to do, and that might involve you setting performance objectives and things. So it might help you to have in your mind one of the things that you're thinking you want to develop, because you might be able to relate that then to what I'm talking about. So the objectives, and I have lots of lovely witty reveals and animation, but unfortunately we can't do that because of the technology. So by the end of the webinar, we will have discussed the importance of identifying and engaging stakeholders. So we'll define who those are, what they are, why they're important. Agreed the difference between problem solving and decision making, and the subtle difference and why that's important. Explored some techniques for gathering information to aid our problem solving and really to present the ideas that we've got. And then I'll be confirming the next steps for any work that the apprentices need to do. Obviously, Maria and Sharon are exempt from that unless you'd like to undertake an apprenticeship, in which case I'd be very happy to talk to you. Okay, so the agenda, we've done the welcome. This is what we're going to cover broadly, not necessarily all in that order, but problem solving and decision making, techniques, stakeholders and why they matter, and next steps. The reason escalation is down the side, as you can see from my notes, is because it might be necessary at any stage during the process. I.e. to escalate a problem, it's not your problem to pass it to someone else or to share it or to seek permission. So that's why it's down the side. Okay, so for those of you that have been on a Perform boot camp, that wheel will look quite familiar. I'd really like to share this properly, which means I can't see your messages, but I'm going to. Let me do that for a minute because it's so much nicer. So the Perform wheel, the reason why we're popping this up here is having done some work with Perform myself this week, we can see that the level apprenticeship completely supports the embedding of the Perform philosophy. When I was on boot camp this week, it links very, very closely. So it makes sense to reinforce that wherever we can. So you probably know, there is a vision. Now, if we were to relate that to what you're doing, that might be your vision, might be your aim for your area of improvement. With Perform, there's a visual management board, isn't there? Well, you'll need to think about how and who you're going to communicate what you want to do with people, how you're going to communicate that, and also how you're going to monitor progress and check that people are okay. Perform talks about rocks in the diary and performance reviews. When you are moving forward with a project, you're going to need to set key performance indicators or milestones, measures of the improvement. You know what the final improvement is that you want to achieve, if you want to improve team performance or deliver a training program, but what are the steps on the way? How do you monitor your progress? And with Perform as well, it's about creating new routines and embedding the practice so it becomes part of us. They call that mastery, so it becomes part of us, and measuring success. So although this isn't about Perform in itself, you can see the links. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's put this up properly again as well. This is quite neat in that it summarises the stages that we're going to need to go through. So hopefully it's a useful way of looking at what we're doing when we're identifying work areas that we seek to develop or improve. So this webinar, we're looking at stages 1, 2 and 3. A bit of 4, but that's going to involve talking to people. And 5, evaluation, is something that we'll need to look at, but we're not going to discuss it today. Okay, so problem identification. Problem or improvement, we're using the phrase problem, but it's just an area for development. So you guys have all begun to think about things that you want to make better, that are within your gift, part of what you're able to do, that you're permitted to do within your scope. So the little writer, number 1, it says, what's the discrepancy between what's expected and what's occurring? So you've identified that something isn't happening that should be. That's the first thing. Or that you could introduce something which would resolve a challenge. So you've identified areas. What we're going to be talking about really on this webinar is, looking further at number 2, why is the problem occurring and how would provide evidence for that. You may be very sure about that, but you're going to need to talk to other people about that, and they're going to want evidence, maybe a bit of persuading. And even if they don't want all the evidence, your apprenticeship evidence needs to show that you've looked at this. And then in terms of planning development, what the goal is, what intervention you plan, what do you want to do, and how do you want to monitor it. Those are all things that you're going to need to look at. Number 4 is something that will involve other people. And how you'll plan to do it. So really at this stage we're looking at 1, 2 and 3, getting permission, getting the information we need, so we're managing our horizons. So let me come out of this and go into the next slide. Okay, so I'll leave that up as it is. So let's start by understanding what it says here, the nature, scope and impact of the situation or the area that you want to address. So the nature of the problem. Is there one, and how do you know? Where is your evidence? Is this something that's ongoing in terms of timing and history? Is it something that's happened before? Is it something you can't see the presentation? Gotcha. Okay. Can you see it? Same here. Right. If I do that, can you see it now? When I put it full screen, can you see it now? I'm just going to need to go out. No. I have no idea what disappeared. I wonder why that's disappeared. Bear with a minute, folks. Is that sharing now? You can see it now. Okay, so it seems to turn itself off, which is interesting, isn't it? Can you see the PowerPoint now? Yes. Fantastic. Okay, I'll leave it like this then rather than going back and forth. Fantastic. Okay, so we'll have to forget the nice animation. So is there a problem? How do you know? Is it a problem, the timing in history, is it a problem that's occurred before? Is it a problem that's recurring? Is it new? Is it intermittent? Is it permanent? So that's really the first thing to know. You know, what's the evidence? And that might sound silly, but you do need to know that it's not a one-off. And we'll talk about identifying the actual problem in a minute rather than the symptom of it. So at this stage, we're just looking at the scope, the nature. So is there a problem? How do you know? Where is your evidence? What told you there's a problem? What's told you you need to improve something? How long has it been going on? Has somebody tried to rectify it in the past? If they did, why didn't that work? So you need to do a bit of digging, okay? And you may know all that already, but we need to capture that. We need to capture that, and I'll explain why. The next bit, the scope of the problem. Who's affected by it? What's affected by it? So it might be capacity for work, it might be morale, it might be efficiency, it might be competence. So what's affected in terms of the actual work that needs to be undertaken, and also in terms of performance, if you like, who is affected, so what and who, how many people, in which areas, does it stray beyond your immediate department? Is there a knock-on? The scope here, does this reach outside your department or your area of authority? And I'll come back to this point because this is, again, very much about whether we need to escalate or seek permission. Who else is going to have a view on this? So I know it helps me to talk to Leanne and others if I'm mulling over a challenge. I might perceive something to be a problem and they already have a solution. Or I agree with certain aspects. But it's really important to recognise my bias, to recognise my preconceived ideas, and to maybe seek views of others. Maybe I need to go and seek the view of somebody I'd rather not seek the view of, somebody that I know isn't going to agree, but I really need to have a balanced view of this. It's really important to take into account all relevant opinions, okay? And then the bottom bit, the impact of the problem. Is it localised? I mentioned that at the top, really. Is it within your remit? Is it bigger than you thought? Is it your problem or is it someone else's? That doesn't mean you can't take ideas forward, but this is beginning to give us an inkling of who else we might need to involve and permission we may need to seek before we pursue our ideas. And that was one of the main reasons for this session, because I was concerned that we might all start running around trying to change things, and that could upset people and processes. An example of that is one of the apprentice team who's identified a challenge with some of the recruitment areas. Well, that definitely affects other people, and if we start tinkering with that, we're actually tinkering with NBT processes, policies. We might be highlighting a challenge in another department that's way beyond our remit. So we need to tread very carefully, really. We need to tread very carefully. Okay. Right, so I'm going to be asking you to type stuff in a minute for this. So quite a useful technique, very simple technique, and some of you will have heard of this before. I'm thinking particularly the P&T guys, is about using 5 whys. It's something they mention on Perform, but it's one way of getting to the root cause of a problem. Because occasionally what we do is the problem we see is a presenting issue. It's not the root cause, it's a consequence of a deeper problem. So if you like, a symptom of an illness rather than the actual illness. So let's use this as an example. So let's have some whys here. So let's imagine I'm caught jumping a red light. Okay, so I'll answer the first one. So why might that be? I'm going to say I was caught jumping a red light because I couldn't stop. Why couldn't I stop? Tell me, why couldn't I stop? Somebody type something. I'm hoping you can hear me. Okay. Gosh, let's hope not, Sal. Sal's just said my brakes are faulty. Okay. Anybody got anything else? Why else? Why couldn't I stop? I'm going to put the brakes are faulty to one side. The weather conditions wouldn't enable me to. Okay, let me take that one. So the weather conditions, road was wet. Okay. If I couldn't stop because the weather conditions wouldn't enable me to stop as I approached a red light, what's another reason behind that? So I was going too fast. I couldn't stop because the weather conditions wouldn't allow me to stop in time. What does that mean? What's the next why? Why was that? Why couldn't I stop in time? The weather conditions, but you didn't give myself enough distance. Okay. If I didn't give myself enough distance, why would that be? Might I have been going too fast? Yeah, okay. If I was driving too fast, why was I driving too fast? I'm on my way to work, I'm caught jumping a red light. Why was I driving too fast? I'm late, okay. Why am I late? Why might I be? Because your alarm didn't go off. I love you, Lauren, for that one. Yeah. So the real problem here is it didn't go off. Why? I wonder why my alarm didn't go off. Maria, let me see what you put before we go into that. Okay, Maria's logging out. Go into the group chat, sorry. Drove too fast, you're late. Okay. Sorry, just to go into those messages. Okay. So if I was late and my alarm didn't go off, what's the actual problem? Is the problem isn't that I went through a red light, is it? The problem is that I was going too fast. The reason I was going too fast was because I was late. The reason I was late was because my alarm didn't go off. Okay, my phone died. So my phone died because why? Didn't put it on charge. Okay, so we can carry on forever, but the point is that the presenting issue is we might say, I've got a speeding ticket because I was caught jumping a red light. And the presenting problem is I was caught jumping a red light. But the reason I jumped that red light is 5 or 6 steps before that. It's the night before. I didn't put my phone on charge and my alarm didn't go off. So the problem is actually I need to find a more reliable way of setting an alarm. It's not what it seemed. It's not that I went through a red light. That is the consequence of not having prepared properly, not having set my alarm. So a solution to that, maybe I may go out and buy a good old-fashioned alarm clock. Or I may always remember to put my phone on charge. But if I wake up in time, I won't be speeding, regardless of the weather conditions, I won't jump a red light. So you get where I'm saying, I won't labour the point, but you get where I'm going with that. It's about, are we focusing on the right thing? An example from the department here, they have a situation here where learner evidence for some apprenticeships, not ours, is being delayed because of signatures required on forms. Now, actually, that's not the problem. The problem is that the policy here, we say we require a signature. We don't, actually. We need to look at that policy, but until we change the policy, we can't stop signing the forms, and it's the signing the forms that's delaying the evidence. So signing the forms isn't the problem, the policy is, and that is not within the gift of the people who've got the problem. They've got to go to somebody else to change the policy. So that's an example. Does that make sense before I move on to the next thing? Okay, good. Okay. If you type no, I don't quite know what I'd say at this point, but there we are. So going on to the next slide, the difference then between problem solving and decision making. And I say this because it might be something that they ask you in endpoint assessment, and we'll send you all of this. Problem solving is the process of finding solutions, but we can't problem solve without making decisions. So we make decisions about how we're going to solve our problems, but we can't make decisions without information. Does that make sense? So this is why we're talking about, before we jump to action, I see that happen quite a lot, not with you, but generally in life. People are quick to act, usually because we're under pressure. We have a problem, we resolve it, but actually sometimes we're resolving a symptom, we're not resolving the bigger problem. And I think what you guys want to do is get to the bottom of some of the issues that you've got and have a longer term approach to resolving things much more permanently in certain areas. So we will be problem solving, but we'll be making decisions about how we're going to solve those problems. And to make decisions, we need information. And to get the information, we need to have some techniques, some of which we've visited before. So let's get into that now. If I can move the slides on. So this is all in the handout, and as I say, I'll work with you in a one-to-one on this. But some of the ways you could research and then present your information include, and there's plenty more out there, but a SWOT analysis, which we know about, we've done that, but we'll just revisit it. A PESTLE analysis, which some of you will have seen if you've done managing staff performance, etc. The PDCA cycle, which is sometimes called PDSA, but we'll look at that, and Gantt charts. And Gantt charts are more about presenting your ideas. So we'll just have a look at these. And again, we know that this is the kind of thing that we need to learn as part of this apprenticeship that may come up. So I'm not going to risk going to the full screen again, although this doesn't look very nice. So we know what a SWOT analysis looks like. We did that on our first session. So it's about strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So we could use a SWOT analysis to consider the current situation. So that slide that I looked at earlier on, which talked about the scope of the problem. Let me just go back to it. But we talked about understanding the nature, scope and impact of a problem. You know, what is the problem? How do we know? Who's affected? We could use this to consider the current situation and what we might want to change. So there may only be a problem in a certain area, part of an area. So what are the strengths of the current situation? What are the weaknesses, i.e. the areas that we need to change? What are the opportunities for those changes? And what are the threats, the risks to that change? We could look at that where we are, or you could use it to support what you want to do. So you can either use the SWOT analysis to help you identify where the current problems lie, and what's working well and what isn't, and the opportunities that you might have to change things and the people with whom you might want to work. Or you could use it to present the ideas that you have for change, saying, well, if I introduced a new system for training, the strengths of it would be X, Y, Z. The weaknesses or challenges with it would be, I have to take staff off the job to do the training. Have we got the capacity? How would we get round that? But the opportunities might be X, Y, Z. The threats to it are. So again, the threats might align to the weaknesses. Or the threats might be that you need to make a case for it. You need to convince some people. You need to get the buy-in of stakeholders. So can I move on from SWOT? Do you want to ask me any questions about SWOT? I know we've covered it before. No? Good. Okay. No? Get a move on, Garbett. That's what you're saying, is it? Okay, so no problems with that. Okay. PESTLE analysis. Who's seen this before? Just say yes or no. No. Val, no. Lauren, no. Yes, okay. That might have been something you did in your prints too, I'm thinking. Gosha. Okay, so a PESTLE analysis. We'll go to a full slide, the next slide in a minute. It's at level 3, at the level that we're doing our apprenticeship, we may not use this because it goes bigger, it goes broader, but it's worth knowing about it, partly because it's likely to come up, but also because it might be useful in your area of development to understand how you sit within a bigger picture, or to think whether things that you want to do sit within the current climate, the current culture, the current challenges we face in a broader way. So the appropriateness of your developments on the bigger picture. So if I just walk through it, at the risk of losing you all, I'm just going to go to full screen. I'm hoping you can see that. You'll tell me if you can't see that. So if we think about us as a trust in NBT, and this is with no specific agenda, no specific change, but the way a PESTLE works is it looks at the political, economic, social, technological, legal and environmental perspectives of a problem. Okay, so I've just gone for a blunt instrument here in this example, political. Is a change of government likely to affect what we do? I didn't want to put the B word in there, because I think we're all tired of that at the moment. Brexit, I mean, obviously. So is a change of government likely to affect what we do? Well, you know, it might do in an organisation like the NHS. It certainly would if I was thinking about changes to apprenticeships. The economic areas, what are funding pressures? Do we have the resource we need to implement developments? We may have a fabulous idea, but we may know that at the moment in NBT there's a post that's frozen and we can't do something. It doesn't mean we couldn't work through our ideas and present them as a case for future, you know, to make a case, to lobby for something. But it is worth knowing that that might have an impact on the timing of something. Excuse me. Because we're an NHS trust, I've just put in here, you know, what are the pressures on our services? We do have an ageing population. I don't know whether that affects what you propose. We have an ageing workforce. And I often reflect back to when I worked in the hospice. One of the reasons we didn't go to 12-hour shifts is that we knew that a huge percentage of our workforce wouldn't be able to cope with it because of their maturity. So they were planning how they might introduce longer shift patterns as the age of the workforce reduced, i.e. as people retired and younger people came in, and how they might have a blend. So that's not relevant necessarily to some of the things that you'll be thinking about, but it's an example. So pressures on our services, we know what those are. Any changes that you want to make, are those going to be possible within what's likely to be coming up? They might be possible, but how might it affect things? Technology. What an irony that I'm talking about that, and we've had problems this morning. How can technology, support developments? Is current technology preventing developments? Again, I'll think about training and performance management and meetings. We could meet a lot more through this medium. There's something called Zoom, which is a bit like Skype. Which does work on NBT, does work with the NBT firewall. I've used it. And that's a really good way of having meetings with people so that you can see them and talk to them, provided you've got the technology to talk to people. But you don't have to be in the same room. And that can be quite useful. It can be quite useful for coaching. It can be quite useful just for meetings. It can be quite useful for performance reviews where you want to see somebody and you want to be able to talk to them. So does technology prevent what we want to do? Would we have to think of a different way? I've just put here, what about employment law and E&D? You know, are there any legal implications? And environmental, what's the impact of this decision? So, you know, if we're going to use technology and that's going to reduce paper, then that's very good for our, you know, eco-friendly approach. If we're proposing running, I'll go back to a training program, we're going to print lots and lots and lots of handouts. Is there a better way of doing it? Do we want to use technology? Do we want to send handouts ahead of the time? Do we want to have a memory stick for everybody so that we've got all the resources on a memory stick and they have that and they can refer to that? All sorts of. This may or may not be you, but it's just another way of framing our thoughts about what we want to do and looking at factors that might impact on them. So let me just come out of that. Hopefully I'm still sharing the screen. Did that make sense? Does anybody want to ask me anything about that? Can you still hear me? Good. Okay. So shall I carry on? Yes. Okay. I'll carry on. All right. Plan, do, check, adjust. Okay. You can see the notes here. These notes are actually taken from your handout, which I've got, which came out with the email, but it was also in your off-the-job training. So it's quite an old model, 1950s. It's even older than I am. But it's simple, and it's kind of how we do things generally. We plan something, well, we hope we do it. We check how it's working, and we make adjustments, and then we plan again. So we go round that cycle. In the planning stage, you may well use a SWOT analysis to help. So this is more a framework, a cycle, which within that cycle, you may use other tools. So at the point of planning a project or an adjustment or a development, you may use a SWOT analysis to help you with your planning, to help you gather the evidence. When you implement what you want to do, pilot something, try it, you may try it in a small way with a controlled group or an individual before you roll it out. And you'll need an action plan around the doing. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How are you going to evaluate it? Which kind of comes into the checking. So the do and the check stages, again, you'll have a plan behind that, whether it's written on a piece of paper, whether it's written on a Gantt chart, which we'll come on to. So we'll look at that in a sec. Okay. You'll want to check what you're doing. So you'll have measures. You'll have, I wanted to, you know, do a performance review with 6 people by this date. So my plan is to do 1 a week over the next X weeks. You'll be able to check your progress. So you'll set milestones, you'll have a plan. And then the adjustments, you need to reflect and look at how well something works. So it's just a very simple cycle. It's probably the way you naturally work, but it's about saying that with you might use some tools to help develop those ideas. Okay. Gantt charts, I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm sure you've seen them before. Has everybody heard or seen them? Doesn't matter if you haven't, just interested to know. Give us a clue. Yeah, no. Okay, hi Lauren. Okay. So a Gantt chart, not seen before. Okay, so I'm going to give you a simple one. And we'll talk at the end. I don't want you thinking you're going to have to do all of this. We'll talk at the end about where we're going with this. But the Gantt chart is really a way of visibly planning what you're going to do. And they can be very, very simple. It's a way of representing a list and a timeline. And they can be very complex or very simple. So when you do your project management training, which isn't till September, okay, so we don't have to pull all of this stuff together immediately in terms of presenting things. When you do your project management training in September, they've got examples of Gantt charts, and they've got an example of a Gantt chart that was used to move into this building, or your building if you're over in Brunel. And I can only, well, you can only imagine how complicated that is. And with that Gantt chart, they've got filters on it, and they've got links from that Gantt chart to other documents and plans. I'm not talking about something that's complicated, that complicated. So Gantt charts are often used in project management to show, it says here on the screen, to show activities against time. They're quite useful to communicate progress. They're quite useful for clarity. And where you've got parts of the process overlap, so you might be planning one stage and doing another, they're quite useful to show that. And it's about you breaking down the problem or breaking down the implementation. Excuse me. So they enable you to see what the activities are that you plan, and all this is in the handout, when things begin and end, ideally, and then you can monitor whether they're overrunning, how long the phases of certain activities will be. So in a very simple form, that is the one. So that's a much simpler way of representing it, and that's in an Excel spreadsheet, and I can send you a template like that if you want it. So, you can change the headings of the columns, but you can see in the very simplest thing, it's, let me go back to performance managing a team. Let's use that as an example. So the first task might be to identify the improvements that you want made overall. So the team, not the individuals, the team performance. What is it? What are the targets that we want to hit? What are the things that we want to do? So it might be that that task is to identify the areas for improvement in terms of the area of work, not individuals. So that's task number one. Who's going to do that? Well, maybe I am. When am I going to start? And when am I going to, finish doing that? Okay. And then you could represent that. If you have the months going along, you could represent that. Task two might be to break the overall areas of improvement down into individuals and allocate them to individuals. Who might do that? When might that process start? When might it end? Task three might be to meet with the individuals and produce a development plan for each of them, carry out a one-to-one, put in place a series of schedules of one-to-ones. And those one-to-ones might run across the month that you can see in the bar charts. They might run across there. So you have a start and an end, but you'll be able to see when they're running. So I hope that kind of makes sense and simplifies it. So again, if it was about a training program, doing the research around it, what is it we need to do, why, how, when. The next task might be presenting that idea, getting buy-in for it. The next task might be beginning to develop the resources, rolling out a pilot. So it's a way of listing the tasks and then identifying when and how they might run and showing that visually. And this isn't set in stone. This is about planning, and it will change, it will move. So again, I'll be able to cover all of this with you on a one-to-one basis, but does that make sense? You don't have to agree with me. Can you see how that kind of a layout might be useful? Yep, says Sal. Okay. And again, I'm not forcing any of these on you. All right, lovely. We don't have to use them. You can say, no, that wouldn't work for me, but thanks for showing it to me, Sal. So, and we can talk as individuals. Okay. So those are some, just to recap, and we've got about 10 minutes to go. Just to recap, so we've thought about any challenges that we've had which have made us think, I want to make something better. We've then thought, if we frame those as problems or ideas we want to improve, we've thought about how do we know that that is the real problem, digging down a bit deeper. What's the scope of it? Is that the real problem? Let's identify if it is, 5 whys. If that is the problem, what's the scope of it? Is it my problem, or do I need to escalate this? And we'll come on to that in a sec. If it is my problem and I have permission from my line manager to look into this a bit further, I better go and do some research and just get my ducks in a row. So I might do a SWOT analysis, I might do a PESTLE, I might think a bit about this, I might already have plans in my mind. I don't need any of those tools, but I'm just going to write it all down and make sure I've got some evidence. I'm going to seek the views of others. I'm going to keep checking in with the people I need to check in with. We'll talk about stakeholders in a minute. Then when I think I know how I might want to roll that out, I'm going to present that. I might put that in a project plan or a Gantt chart, just very simply, just so I know where I want to start and finish. And these are very simple tasks. This isn't a big, massive thing. These are the kind of areas that you have a remit for, as I say, performance managing people, communicating with your teams better. I know one of you started on that, and you started by running briefings and meetings, and you'll want to measure how well those are going. This isn't about big projects, this is about the individual things. So that's where we're up to with that. So stakeholders. It would have been lovely if I could have revealed that, but there you are, bang, you've just got it there because of the technology. So a stakeholder, let's just read this together. It can be a person, an individual person, above or below you, i.e. your manager or a peer or somebody that has a vested interest in what you're doing. So an individual, a group or an organisation that's going to be impacted by the outcome of a project or a development. So the thing that you're wanting to do, they're going to be affected by it. They may be the people that are going to be going through a change, or that's going to be being asked to do something differently. So they may have an interest in the success of a project, or if they're affected by any developments, they may resist it, you know, if they're affected. They may be outside your department. They may even be above you, okay? So, and it's saying here stakeholders can have a positive or negative influence. So let me go back to recruitment, somebody who wants to focus on recruitment and some of the challenges that currently are. That would be a classic example of where this goes beyond their work. So they've identified some challenges with it as it reaches them. But it starts somewhere else and it ends somewhere else, and they are just a cog in that wheel. So there will be stakeholders. They will need to talk to their line manager first and say, look, these are some of the challenges, this is what I'd like to do. The line manager may say, I do that bit, you don't, but you could have a look at this. So this is why we're saying, you know, we look at the areas that we want to focus on very carefully, and we involve others before we go running amok. Involving them means informing, asking permission. If they're going to be people affected by the change, we think about how we might want to communicate things. If they're the people that we want to work slightly differently or put through a training program, we start to think about how they'd be affected and what that means for them and how we're best to frame what we want to do. This would have been lovely and animated with 4 questions here, but I want to see your answers. So let's start with the top. So who might your stakeholders be? Can you think in your area where you're working, who might they be? Why you might want to engage them or talk to them? Kind of things they'll want to know. Let's just focus on those 3. So in things that you want to do, get typing team. Who might your stakeholders be? You're either typing a lot, so it's taking a while to come through, or you're not typing. Any messages coming? Ah, lovely. For you, we need to get, yeah, okay, wow. So that's a long way up. Okay, Mark, yep, Gosha, managers, domestic supporters. Don't know if Lauren's going to, but you get the gist of it. Yep. Yeah, great, okay. So now, we're not big managers, we're not very senior managers, and we aren't talking about doing big projects here. We're talking about all the things you've started to think about that you've discussed with me. They are within your remit, yeah? But you don't work in isolation. So we know that we need to talk to others about the kind of things we want to do, but they are within our remit. And I just do want to check in with all of you to make sure that we aren't doing more than we need to do for the apprenticeship, that I'm not pushing you to a higher level than you need to work at. In the level 5 apprenticeship, they have to manage a 6-month-long project. This isn't about this. This is about little, using the tools we've talked about, understanding what they are, but small improvements, not being responsible for a massive thing. So I'll just check with you that we're at the right levels when I work with you individually, okay? Can you see what the problems are of not involving people, not getting their buy-in or their permission? What kind of challenges, you don't have to name names or anything, but in your areas, can you see challenges that might occur? Yeah, absolutely. So it's about the right message. And it's also about us not overstepping our remit. And that's where I'm saying here, I'm tightly with you. I don't want to incite revolution and bring about the downfall of the apprenticeships. This is about, you've all had really good ideas for things that you think you can make gentle improvements to, and that's what we're talking about here. That was quite a nice slide, but it's not coming out the way I would like it to, because it wouldn't let me share the screen. But so when do we need to escalate a problem? This poor person, they're drowning with paper. I'm just going to put that up, and hopefully you can see it. So if it's beyond our remit, and we're going to find that out when we start sniffing around and thinking about the scope of the problem. Remember that slide at the beginning, and I'll email it all out after this. That right at the beginning, the scope of the problem, those 3 arrows. What is it, where is it, who does it affect? At that point, the alarm bells will start going if we know that it strays into other areas, and we'll be talking to our line managers and others. If we recognise that we don't have the knowledge to move forward with it, now that might mean that you say, I need some development, and that's going in your PDP. And that might be around challenging conversations. It might be about techniques for delivering some learning. It might be about understanding more about a recruitment process. It might be about different ways of communicating in team meetings. And that isn't necessarily a barrier. It just might be a timing issue. I need to go and find out. I need to learn about this. Until I know that, I can't do this. And that's fine. That's about timing. But it may mean that you need to escalate. In other words, go and seek advice. Other options being exhausted. Let's imagine you've given support, you put in place something that you want to, and it's not working. Your manager may have said, "Yeah, give it a go. Keep me posted." And it may just be on the too difficult pile. The other thing may be that we're not allowed to. It's just not something we're permitted to do. And I'm still having to check my boundaries a lot, with Leanne, with my line manager and her manager. So I will often at the moment go to Leanne and say, is this something I'm allowed to do or not? And she'll say, no, that sits with me. You don't do that bit. Or, yes, you can. Please email them. So and that's just for my day-to-day normal work. So I'm pretty sure you know where your boundaries are. But we have to be really careful that in our enthusiasm, we don't forget to just ask or just check. And that's where I want to be mindful of checking processes and making sure that we are operating within our areas of authority, if you like. I call it, is it within our gift? Okay, so rustle of paper here whilst I move forward. So let me just do a stock check at this point, because I'm going to bring this on back to the standards now, back to what we've been doing. I'll ask you to shoot me an email after this to tell me how useful or not the webinar's been, rather than do a reflection or anything. Can you just give me, in a few words, an indication of, is this hanging together? Is this filling in some of the areas? You've got ideas about what you want to do. Is this helping you see what it might look like, some of the things that we may work together on next to do? You can be brutally honest with me. Just wait for the messages to come up. Right, okay, good. So as long as you can see the links, great, okay. And as I say, you can be less polite on email afterwards, okay. So I'm hoping that what I'm beginning to do, because I do appreciate that for you, this apprenticeship might feel a bit bitty. I live and breathe it. You don't. You have a job in between. This is what I do. So, you know, where you've thought about, oh, I'd like to do this, and then I'm coming out and observing you doing stuff, and well, where does all that fit? We're moving forward where we've got ideas that we want to implement. This is about supporting those ideas and bringing those projects to fruition, if you like, very gently. We've got a year, you know, very gently doing that. And what I'm doing on Monday is beginning to pull together some milestones for you, because I recognise that we need that, in terms of, well, when should my PDP draft have been finished by, and when should you have it? When should this be finished by? Because at the moment, my sense is that you're getting a lot of stuff fired out at you, training days and tasks on one file and off-the-job training, and I wonder whether it's difficult to fit it all together. You can tell me that in an email, you don't have to tell me that now. And I'm thinking that a plan which shows how the training fits into the work that you're doing might be a useful thing. So let me bring this back to the standard because WebEx will cut us off in a minute. So as you're doing what you're doing, you are demonstrating these behaviours. I've seen you demonstrating these. So you can see them on the screen. I don't need to read them through. And these are all the behaviours in the standard that I need to see. And all the work that you'll be doing, it is doing this. You are flexible, you're creative, you're innovative. So you can see how, in moving things forward, you're demonstrating these behaviours. I'm going to just refresh our memories on these slides. Those of you that did the first training had a slightly different template, and I'll just check. So there were two templates. With the second training, we linked your current work priorities to inform your PDP. So what you've all thought about already is, what are your current work priorities, and what are the challenges, and what do you want to do? So that's how you've decided on your areas that you want to develop. Then you started to put your PDPs together, okay? And your objectives, your actions, the resources are informed by the projects that you want to do. So if I want to write a training program, what does that mean for me? What is my personal learning? What do I have to do? So the project informs your personal development, but it isn't the same. I hope that makes sense. I'll reinforce that when I come out to see you. So your personal development plans are about the development that you need to get through this apprenticeship, and also partly linked to some of the things that you want to do. Okay, so it's areas personally that you want to develop, but if you, and I'll use the training program again as an example, and the performance management, if you wanted to run a training program which is in your work priority, in your project, in your ideas, in your plan, in order to do that, what do I need to learn? What does that mean for my learning? And that's what goes into your PDP. Maybe I need to learn how to produce PowerPoint. Maybe I need to discuss some ideas on how to present the training. Maybe I need to, and that's your personal development plan. And your personal development comes from your reactive and proactive reasons for learning, which we covered in the first session. So over the next month, I'm going to aim to pull all that together with you so that we've got our finalised PDPs. And that's why I sort of nested this session in it. So I hope that's helpful. These are the next steps. And I am seeing you all individually, and you can email me all individually, and you can ring me individually. When I say number one, think about your original idea. You know, the things that we've talked about that you want to work on, you know, pick one of those. How does what we have explored today help? Or does it? In what way? You don't have to tell me this. I'm asking you to just think about it. And start thinking about how you might want to develop your plans, okay? And I'll be talking, when I come and see you next, we will look at that. We will focus in on that, okay? And I'll say, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And I'll pull all these areas together with you. That will be the focus of our next meeting. So what I'm asking you to do really is think about it. Look at some of the techniques and things that we've talked about. Look at the handout. I'll send you the slides. Think about how you might be developing your plan. If you want to develop it, carry on. And then what I do want to do is have us update our personal development plans in line with the work that we want to do, the learning that we need to do. And I'm seeing most of you over the next few weeks anyway. But as your PDPs start to be developed, send me early drafts and I'll comment on them and we'll bounce them back and forth. And it would be really good if we could have those PDPs in a kind of a finalised state by the end of April. They will change, they will grow over the duration of the apprenticeship, but we kind of want a starting point here. My personal development plan for the next 12 months of this apprenticeship is these things, and we can close it off. We can add things to it, but we'll want to have some measurements against that. So that's the next steps. What I'm going to ask you to do is email me in a minute or at some point, and I'll email you with the slides, but tell me how useful or not this has been, and I'll be coming to see you anyway. So I'd like you to be brutally honest about how useful or not this webinar has been. I know the technology has been a pain. I'm going to let you go unless there's anything that you want to say to me by text at this point. Are you happy with what I'm asking you to do on this slide? Yes. Oh, thanks, Lauren. Oh, okay. Okay. And if you want me to come and see you sooner than we've got planned in, tell me. I'm going to email you in a minute with these slides. By all means, tell me if you want me to come and see you sooner. All right. And I can say thank you at this point. There we are, in lots of languages. So I do apologise for the glitches. There we go. That's technology for you. We'll try and resolve those before we do this again. I hope it's been useful. Thank you so much for bearing with us. The others have got to watch the recording, which is far worse, I'm sure. So I'll let you go. Take care, and I'll be emailing you in a minute. Okay. Thank you, guys. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye, Gosha. Bye. 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 Bye.